There will never be another World Series like the 1991 World Series. I'm not talking about whether it's going to go to 7 games or not, but to this day, to my knowledge, this is the only World Series to feature 2 teams that the year prior both finished in last place, as the Minnesota Twins and the Atlanta Braves gave us one of the all-time classic World Series. Now, as I mentioned, both of these teams are coming off last place finishes in 1990. The Twins went 74 and 88, and the Braves were 65 and 97. Both teams were, in kind of this, not necessarily rebuilding phase, but a phase of going nowhere, as since 1987, when the Twins won their World Series, they just seemed to get back to being mediocre. As for the Atlanta Braves, they hadn't won any sort of World Series since the 1950s, so they were waiting a long time, but I don't think anybody saw this coming. The year before, in the 1990 World Series, the Reds shocked the world by sweeping the heavily favored Oakland Athletics, and both teams were actually the favorites to do it again, along with other teams like the Dodgers, and even the White Sox people were predicting to have a chance, and the Pittsburgh Pirates, who were now an up-and-comer from having a good year in 1990, were also one of the favorites in the National League, and heck, the Pirates even finished with the best record in all of baseball at 98 wins. And then the Twins and the Braves, well, they had the second and third best record in the league. The Minnesota Twins went from 74 and 88 to 95 and 67, while the Braves went from 65 and 97 to 94 and 68, making it to the playoffs respectively. And of course, the Braves would have to face the favored Pirates in the NLCS, whereas the Twins were going to face the Toronto Blue Jays. And this was just the year before the Blue Jays were going to win their back-to-back titles in 1992 and 93, so the pieces for the Blue Jays were there, they just weren't quite ready to get over that hump yet. However, they were also favored. The Twins took care of business, though, beating the Blue Jays in 5 games, while the Braves and Pirates played an absolute classic NLCS, and obviously we know it as the one and the only Fight! Actually, that was the next year, so scratch that. It was not the Bream to the plate year, but it was still a pretty classic NLCS in itself. Going the full 7 games, the Braves shut out the Pirates in Game 7 to earn their first pennant in a while. So now, this World Series is featuring 2 teams that just the year before were in the basement in their respective divisions. Now, it's not like these teams didn't have good players. The Twins still had Kent Herbeck, who was there, 31 years old, still going well, a 22-year-old rookie by the name of Chuck Knobloch, who wasn't hitting homers, but he did win Rookie of the Year, so that tells you a lot there. Kirby Puckett, of course, was a fan favorite, and on the pitching side was where it was for the Twins. Jack Morris, now 36 years old, the hometown guy, coming in, 1-year deal, and he was good this year. Kevin Tapani, he ended up having a 2.99 ERA and 34 starts, and Scott Erickson, who was only 23 years old at this point, was a 20-game winner with an ERA of 3.18, all pitching over 200 innings. After that, the rotation gets a little shaky, but with that 1-2-3 punch, they were still really good. They had a good closer in Rick Aguilera, who saved 42 games. So, nonetheless, the Twins definitely had some star power. And the Atlanta Braves were interesting, too, because this was like when they had, all those great pitchers out there. Granted, some of them were there, and we will get to that, but this was before the Atlanta Braves would start to, put things all together, as this was the year where they would officially get the moniker of Team of the 90s, as from 1991 to 1999, the Atlanta Braves would go to 5 World Series, sure only winning one of them, but from 1991 to 2005, minus the strike-shortened 1994 season where there was no playoffs or anything, the Atlanta Braves would then go on to win the NL East all of those years, and some of these guys were along for the ride for a long time. Terry Pendleton was here. He was the National League MVP. They had Lonnie Smith, who was playing in yet another World Series. They had Ron Gant, David Justice, some young guys there who were also hitting well. Plus, the addition of a veteran like Sid Bream. He wasn't necessarily a great player, but he knew his role. And later, guys like Jeff Blauser and Mark Lemke, who were a big part of those, early to mid-90s teams later, would join the fray. And they even had Otis Nixon, who stole 72 bases. So, again, the Braves had guys, but it was their pitching staff, as per usual during this period, that was the strong suit. Tom Glavine was here. He went 20-11 with a 2.55 ERA, winning the Cy Young. They had John Smoltz at just 24 years old, who was good but not quite at his all-star caliber yet. They had Steve Avery, who was only 21 years old but went 18-8 with an ERA of 3.38. And they had the veteran 34-year-old Charlie LeBrant, who went 15 wins, 3.49 ERA. So needless to say, even before, Greg Maddux got there, the Atlanta Braves pitching was still stellar, and the bullpen also really good. But I think all in all, these two teams were just one of those, kind of, I don't want to say flashes in the pan, because like I said, the Braves kept going, whereas the Twins, they would then go on an 11-year playoff drought after this. But they were teams that had a really good season out of nowhere. No one expected them to do anything. And then they gave us an absolute classic of a World Series, as of course, everybody remembers it going the full 7 games. And outside of one of those games, which was Game 5, when the Braves absolutely just demolished the Twins 14-5, all the other games were decided by 3 runs or less, including 3 of them going to extra innings, which includes the last 2 games where the Minnesota Twins, down 3-2, had the walk-off homer by Kirby Puckett to win the game 4-3 in 11. And then the next day, Jack Morris and a young John Smoltz battled it out. And in the 10th inning, it was 0-0. And in the bottom of that inning, the Twins walked it off for their second and most recent World Series in a 1-0 victory.
The Twins are going to win the World Series. The Twins have won it. It's a base hit. It's a 1-0 10-inning victory.
A game, by the way, where Jack Morris pitched all 10 innings. You're not going to see that a lot anymore. Now, why do I say that a World Series like this may never happen again? Well, because both teams were in last place just the year before, only to make it to the World Series the next year. Now, you gotta think, every year we always get those surprise team or two that make the playoffs, or at least come out of nowhere and have like a winning record. But this World Series is the equivalent now of, say, like the Los Angeles Angels, who were a last place team in the NL West, went on to play the Miami Marlins in the World Series. Like, 2 teams that were utterly bad last year, that you have zero expectation for, just all of a sudden having it click. It just, like, with the way baseball works, especially now, I just don't ever see that happening again. Or if it does, it'll be years and years and years down the line, because a lot of things have to go right. A lot of the prospects that those teams have to just, take off altogether at once, while also having some additions come in that, are willing to come in and do their part and, do what they need to do to help the team win and teach the young team how to win together. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just, this is the only time that this has happened, so it is a rare thing, and for it to happen again, we would just need a lot of upsets in the playoffs, because now with the playoffs expanded, you don't have just a championship series and then a World Series. You have a wild card round, a divisional round, and a championship series to get through before you even get to the World Series. So it's a lot harder for these Cinderella teams to come out and do their thing. I mean, we saw it with the Phillies in 2022 and the Diamondbacks in 2023, but they did both lose those World Series because, frankly, they weren't really supposed to be there. They just got hot at the right point in time and had put the pieces together from one year to another. They just weren't fully quite ready to take that next step. That's just my thoughts. Would really like to hear in the comments below, what was everyone's thoughts on this World Series in 1991, the people that lived through it and remember it, because, again, these were 2 teams with no expectations whatsoever heading into this season. All of a sudden playing in the World Series, I mean, the Twins and Braves fan bases had to be ecstatic, while the rest of the MLB fan bases had to be surprised in one way or another that, hey, my team was supposed to be the one to go to the World Series, but instead we get this. Like, I feel like maybe it wasn't a hyped up World Series, but when you look at it and we go, oh, it's one of the best World Series ever, and who knows if we would have gotten a series like this if the Twins and the Braves didn't play each other in this World Series. It's one of those big what ifs. This never happened, and say a team like the A's or maybe the Blue Jays made the World Series and played the Braves or the Pirates, like, things would be a whole lot different. We could have got a better World Series maybe, but this World Series in particular wouldn't go down as what it is today, which is seen as one of the best World Series in history, especially a World Series that went the full 7 games. But that's it for me. Stay safe out there, and until then, I will catch you all in the next one.